Hello, everybody. So, this is for the podcast for November 30th. And what you guys are going to be working with now is called domain and range. And domain is the numbers that you're allowed to input into the equation. Range would be the numbers that you're allowed to get out. So, it's your output. Now, to talk just a little bit more about that. Let's say you guys work washing dishes at the Grumpy Troll. Let's say you get paid $5 an hour. So if I were to make up a formula for your paycheck, would be $5 times the number of hours you work. Now, domain is the numbers that you're allowed to fill into it. Would it make any sense to say that you worked, the number of hours you worked, is negative 2.5? No, it doesn't make any sense at all to think of filling in negative 2.5 in here. You can't work a negative number of hours. Can you work 0 hours? No. It doesn't make sense to say you would get no paycheck. It doesn't make sense. So the numbers that you're allowed to fill into this formula are only numbers that are positive and bigger than 0. So H would need to be greater than 0. That's an example of the domain. It's the numbers you're allowed to fill into the equation. Range would be the number, or so it would be the answer. So in other words, the size of your paycheck. So a negative paycheck doesn't make any sense. A paycheck of 0 doesn't make any sense. So the size of your paycheck also would need to be greater than 0. So this would be the domain. This would be the range. The hours you work have to be greater than 0, and your paycheck has to be greater than 0. Okay? Now, to give you some more concrete or some examples of what you'll see in your homework, this is a line segment. It runs between these 2 points. Notice it doesn't have arrows on the end. If I think of reading from the you read from the left side of the page to the right side of the page. It's starting at this point, and that point would be -3, -5, and it goes to 2, 6, okay? Begins at -3, -5, and ends at 2, 6. Domain, when you're looking at a graph, it's still what we were talking about. It's the numbers you're allowed to put in, but it's also the x's that you get used. X's are what you input into an equation, okay? Think of it just the little lines that we've been doing. You fill in an x to find the y value, okay? Domain is your x's that get used. Range are the y's that get used, okay? It's your outputs. This would be your inputs. Okay? So if I think of this graph, x's move side to side. It's trapped between these 2 dashed vertical lines. It's trapped between these, the x's. The x's are trapped between those. They begin at -3 and they end at 2. Those are your x's. So the domain for this question is your x is bigger than or equal to -3, smaller than or equal to 2. This is your domain. It's trapped between -3 and 2. Okay? Range. Range are your y's that get used. It's trapped vertically. It's your y values. Your y values are between these 2 numbers. It's the y's. The y values are -5 and 6 at its ends. So the y's are trapped between -5 and 6. The smaller number goes on the left. This is the smaller. And the bigger goes on the right. I don't know if I can squeeze it in there bigger. bigger goes on the right. Smaller on the left, bigger on the right. Range is your y values, domain is your x values. And this is how you guys would write it. Okay? This is what it looks like in Delta Math. Domain is your trapped, again, with it. Domain is your x's. Okay? Determine the domain of the graph. The x's, well, I guess if we look at the coordinate, is -2, where it begins. -4 is the y value. It ends at 10, 2. Domain, your graph starts here, and it goes, it moves along, it moves along, it moves along, and ends here. I'm reading from the left to the right. Starts here, moves along to the right. So it's starting at -2, domain is your x's, and it's ending at 10, and it's trapped between those. So the domain, it deals with your x's, it's trapped between -2 and 10, and that's what you'd write here. Answer, -2 less than or equal to, you choose that point, x less than or equal to 10. That's what you'd write, and you'd submit your answer. Okay? If they asked the range, if instead of domain they said range, range are the y's. It's as low as -4, and it's as high as 2. So the y's are trapped between, it's bigger than the smallest number, sorry about that, and it's smaller than the biggest number. Something I want to point out here is notice that the ends are both closed circles. If this was an open circle, remember it doesn't include that. So it would be -4 less than or equal to y less than 2. If this was also an open circle, then this, oops, I didn't mean to grab the whole thing, I meant to choose the little one, would also be that way. Closed circle means you have the equal signs. Open circle means you don't. Range are the y's. Domain is the x's. Okay, the initial question is asking for range. The highest it is up here, and the lowest it is down here. Let me move that off so you can still see the endpoint. It is trapped between these two horizontal lines. Okay? The range still is going to, whoop, okay, hold on. We'll worry about the equal signs in just a second. Let me worry about those in just a minute. Okay? The smallest number is -10 for the y's, and the biggest number is a 3. I know this is on the left side of the graph, but I don't put it on the left. The biggest number is always on the right, and the smallest number is always on the left. Okay? Now, this one has an open circle, so it doesn't get the equal sign. This one has a closed circle, so it does get the equal sign. Okay? Y is less than or equal to 3 and greater than -10. You're below or equal to negative or +3, but you're above the -10. Okay? What if they asked you for domain? Well, domain is the x's, so we'll start like this. Okay? I can remove this stuff if that helps. Domain is your x's. It's trapped for x's, ooh, come on, between these vertical lines. It's trapped between these. These are the x's that get used. The smallest x is -9, and the biggest x is 5. You're trapped between there. Smallest number goes on the left, biggest number goes on the right. Now look at your endpoints. At -9, it's closed, so that gets the equal sign. The biggest number, 5, is open, so it doesn't get the equal sign. Smallest number on the left, biggest number on the right. Smallest left, biggest right. Okay? Don't worry about these other symbols that are down here like this. Don't worry about those. Just write your answer like this. Okay? That should be the last screenshot. Let me check. Yep. Thanks for your time. Have a great one.